Marcus Riley had exactly three things going for him in the vast expanse of the galaxy: a decent wrench technique, an impressive collection of duct tape, and the dubious honor of being the only human maintenance engineer willing to work on Kepler 422b, which, according to every travel brochure in known space, was about as hospitable as a black hole's morning breath. "The atmospheric readings are within acceptable parameters," announced Dr. Velox, his amphibian features glistening with what Marcus had learned was either excitement or terror. With Velox, it was usually both. The good doctor had skin that shifted colors based on his mood, currently cycling through a nervous rainbow that would make a disco ball jealous. Commander Thane, a 7-foot-tall crystalline being who looked like someone had crossbred a praying mantis with a chandelier, clicked his mandibles in what passed for agreement among his species. "The geological surveys indicate minimal seismic activity. We should be able to complete our research and return to the ship within 72 standard hours." Marcus tightened another bolt on the atmospheric processor and tried not to laugh. In his 15 years of keeping alien technology from exploding, he'd learned that whenever someone used phrases like minimal risk or routine operation, the universe took it as a personal challenge. "Hey, Pip!" Marcus called to the youngest member of their team, a fuzzy little creature that looked like a cross between a koala and a very optimistic mushroom. "Hand me that molecular spanner, would you?" Pip bounced over eagerly, his 3 eyes blinking in sequence. "Marcus, is it true that humans can survive in almost any environment? The database says your species is classified as adaptable but fragile." "Fragile?" Marcus snorted, accepting the tool. "Kid, whoever wrote that clearly never met my ex-wife." The truth was, humans had developed something of a reputation in galactic society. Not a good one. Most species viewed them as soft, pink, inexplicably optimistic creatures who somehow managed to spread across the galaxy despite having all the natural defenses of a soap bubble. They were the cosmic equivalent of golden retrievers, friendly, enthusiastic, and completely unprepared for the harsh realities of a universe that wanted to eat them. Marcus had stopped trying to correct this misconception years ago. It made his job easier when everyone expected him to hide behind the nearest rock at the first sign of trouble. "The transport will return for us in exactly 71 hours and 43 minutes, Commander Thane announced, consulting his wrist display, assuming, of course, that we encounter no complications. And that's when the ground beneath them decided to demonstrate exactly what it thought of Commander Thane's assumptions. With a sound like the galaxy's largest zipper coming undone, a massive fissure opened up, swallowing their transport whole and leaving the 4 of them stranded on a planet that was suddenly looking a lot less friendly. Dr. Veloc's skin went full Christmas tree mode. "Well," he squeaked, "this is suboptimal." Marcus looked at the smoking crater where their ride home used to be, then at his 3 alien companions, who were staring at him with expressions that roughly translated to "fix this, human." He sighed, shouldered his toolkit, and started walking toward the dark forest that stretched endlessly in every direction. "Come on then," he called over his shoulder. "Let's go find somewhere to set up camp before something decides we look tasty." Behind him, he could hear Pip whisper to Dr. Velox, "Why isn't he panicking?" "I have no idea," Velox whispered back, his skin now a confused shade of purple. "The psychological profiles indicate humans should be experiencing severe distress right now." Marcus smiled grimly. They had no idea what humans were really capable of when things went sideways, but they were about to find out. 2 hours into their unscheduled hiking expedition, Commander Thane made a discovery that turned his crystalline features an alarming shade of amber. "According to my scanner, we've entered the territorial range of a razorclaw pack." "Oh, wonderful," Marcus muttered, kicking a rock. "And let me guess, razorclaws are the galaxy's version of cuddly puppies?" Dr. Velox's skin had gone a sickly green that clashed horribly with his earlier purple panic mode. Razorclaws are apex predators with an intelligence rating of 7.4 and a dietary preference for, well, us. "Bee hunt in coordinated packs of 12 to 15 individuals," Thane added helpfully. "Each specimen measures approximately 4 meters in length, with retractable claws capable of shearing through titanium alloy. The survival rate for encounters with a full pack is statistically insignificant." "You know what I love about you guys?" Marcus said, adjusting his tool belt. "You're like walking encyclopedias of exactly the information I didn't want to hear." Pip, who had been unusually quiet, suddenly perked up his fuzzy ears. "Do you hear that?" They all froze. In the distance, barely audible above the alien wind, came a sound that was unmistakably a distress beacon. The universal SOS that every species in the galaxy recognized. "Another crash," Thane observed with his usual talent for stating the obvious. Marcus was already heading toward the sound before the others could object. Could be survivors. Marcus, wait, Dr. Velox called, his skin now cycling through colors so fast it was giving everyone a headache. The logical course of action is to avoid additional complications and focus on our own survival. But Marcus had already found them. 3 small figures huddled around the wreckage of what looked like an evacuation pod. Kids. Well, alien kids, but kids nonetheless. The eldest couldn't have been more than 10 in human years, if humans age the same way as whatever species these little ones belong to. Well, hello there, Marcus said softly, crouching down to their level. The youngsters looked up at him with wide, frightened eyes. One was clearly injured, clutching what appeared to be a broken arm. Marcus? Commander Thane's voice carried a warning tone that could have frozen helium. We cannot take on additional passengers. Our survival odds decrease exponentially with each additional variable. Then it's a good thing I never was much for math, Marcus replied, gently examining the injured cub's arm. Hey there, little guy. This is going to hurt, for just a second, okay? With practiced efficiency, he fashioned a splint from materials in his toolkit. The cub whimpered but held still, apparently sensing that this strange pink creature was trying to help. Dr. Velox had finally caught up, wheezing from the exertion. Marcus, you must understand. With 3 cubs, we become a significantly larger target. The razor claws will be able to track us by scent alone. Our only chance was to move quickly and quietly. Problem solved. We'll move quickly and quietly with 3 extra passengers, Marcus said, helping the cubs to their feet. Problem solved. That's not how survival mathematics works, Thane protested, his crystalline structure practically vibrating with frustration. Marcus stood up and fixed the commander with a look that would have made a drill sergeant proud. Listen, Sparkles, I don't know how things work in your culture, but where I come from, when kids are in trouble, adults don't debate the logistics, they act. Pip, who had been watching this exchange with fascination, tilted his head. But Marcus, the statistical probability of successfully protecting 3 juveniles while evading a razor claw pack is less than 4%. Kid, Marcus said, shouldering his pack and taking the hand of the smallest cub. I've beaten worse odds than that fixing life support systems during solar flares. Besides, you're forgetting something important about humans. What's that? Dr. Velox asked, his skin settling into a resigned blue. Marcus smiled, and for the first time since they'd met him, it wasn't entirely friendly. We're really, really bad at knowing when to quit. The forest around them had gone suspiciously quiet, and somewhere in the distance something howled. It was answered by another howl, then another. The pack was gathering. Well, Marcus said cheerfully, looks like we're about to find out just how bad those odds really are. The razor claws arrived like nightmares given form, and a really bad attitude. Marcus had seen pictures in the Galactic bestiary, but pictures didn't do justice to the reality of 14 apex predators emerging from the forest with the coordinated precision of a military unit. Each one stood as tall as a horse, but moved with the fluid grace of a panther, their obsidian claws catching what little light filtered through the canopy. Oh my, Dr. Velox whispered, his skin cycling through colors so rapidly it looked like he was having a seizure. Oh my, oh my, oh my. Commander Thane had gone completely transparent, which Marcus assumed was either advanced camouflage or the crystalline equivalent of fainting. Pip had curled up into a fuzzy ball and was making small whimpering sounds. The cubs pressed closer to Marcus, who found himself doing something that his alien companions would later describe as either incredibly brave or spectacularly suicidal. He stepped forward. Well, 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 Marcus said conversationally, as if he'd just encountered neighbors who'd let their lawn get a bit overgrown. Looks like we've got ourselves a welcoming committee. The Alpha Razor Claw, distinguishable by its size and the network of scars that decorated its hide like a roadmap of violence, tilted its massive head. Its eyes, each the size of dinner plates, focused on this strange pink creature that had the audacity to speak rather than run. The pack spread out in a textbook hunting formation, cutting off all escape routes. Marcus noted their positioning with the detached interest of someone who'd spent years studying machinery that could kill him in increasingly creative ways. You know what your problem is? Marcus continued, seemingly oblivious to the fact that he was addressing creatures that could disembowel him with a casual swipe. You're trying too hard to be intimidating. All that posturing, the synchronized movement, the dramatic entrance. Very theatrical, but honestly, I've seen scarier things in a malfunctioning garbage disposal. Behind him, he could hear Dr. Velas hyperventilating. Marcus, what are you doing? Having a conversation, Marcus replied without taking his eyes off the Alpha. See, here's the thing about pack hunters. They rely on fear. They expect their prey to panic, scatter, make poor decisions. But I've got news for you, ugly. The alpha razor claw took a step closer, its claws extending with a sound like swords being drawn. The message was clear. Shut up and die quietly. Marcus smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. It was the kind of smile that had once made a vegan negotiator reconsider his life choices. I don't panic, he said simply. I problem solve. And then Marcus Riley, maintenance engineer and part-time miracle worker, did something that violated every principle of prey behavior in the known galaxy. He snarled back. It wasn't a particularly impressive snarl by Razorclaw's standards. Humans, after all, weren't designed for intimidation displays. But there was something in that baring of blunt teeth, something in the way this soft, squishy creature refused to back down, that gave the pack pause. The alpha cocked its head, clearly puzzled. In its experience, prey didn't snarl back. Prey ran, or cowered, or tried to bargain. Prey didn't plant their feet and meet your gaze with the kind of stubborn determination usually reserved for particularly difficult mathematical equations. That's right, Marcus said, his voice dropping to a growl that somehow carried despite his species' obvious vocal limitations. You're looking at something new, something your little pack hasn't encountered before. You're looking at a human who's had a really, really bad day. The cubs behind him had gone silent, sensing the shift in the air. Even the forest seemed to hold its breath. See, you made a mistake, Marcus continued, reaching slowly into his tool belt. You threatened kids. And where I come from, when something threatens kids, we don't run, we don't hide, we don't calculate odds, or weigh survival probabilities. His hand closed around a molecular cutter, a tool designed for precision work on delicate components. In the right hands, it could slice through almost anything. We get creative. The alpha razor claw's pupils dilated. For the first time in its predatory career, it was looking at prey that simply refused to be prey. This wasn't in the behavioral manual. This small pink creature was supposed to be easy meat. Instead, it was staring back with the kind of quiet confidence that apex predators usually reserved for themselves. Last chance, Marcus said pleasantly. Walk away, find something else to hunt. Because I promise you, this is going to end badly for someone, and I've got 3 kids to protect and a really nasty temper when people mess with my work schedule. The pack exchanged glances, clearly uncertain. The alpha's claws scraped against the ground as it considered its options. Marcus waited, perfectly still, perfectly calm, while behind him Dr. Velox whispered prayers to deities that probably didn't exist, and Commander Thane tried to figure out how a maintenance engineer had just turned a certain death sentence into a negotiation. The alpha razor claw made its decision with a sound like ripping metal. It lunged. Marcus had been expecting this. In fact, he'd been counting on it. What the Razorclaw pack didn't understand, what no species in the galaxy seemed to grasp about humans, was that they were persistence hunters who'd spent millions of years turning everything around them into weapons. Marcus didn't need claws when he had a molecular cutter. He didn't need fangs when he had a brain that had been solving problems since he was old enough to take apart his parents' electronics. The Alpha's leap carried it exactly where Marcus wanted it to go. He rolled left, came up running, and triggered his molecular cutter in a sweeping arc that caught the creature across its hindquarters. The tool, designed to slice through starship hull plating, carved through alien hide like it was paper. The Alpha landed hard, roaring in pain and confusion. Marcus was already moving. Rule number 1 about humans, he called over his shoulder to his stunned companions, while simultaneously diving behind a fallen log and pulling out a plasma torch. We don't fight fair, we fight to win. The pack spread out, trying to surround him, but Marcus had spent 15 years crawling through the maintenance shafts of space stations. Confined spaces and multiple threats were just another Tuesday for him. Velox, he shouted, modifying the plasma torch's setting with practiced ease. Those trees to your left, the bark contains combustible resins, right? How did you... Dr. Velox's skin had gone a brilliant orange of shock. Yes, but Marcus, you can't possibly be thinking of... Oh, I'm thinking exactly that, Marcus grinned as he aimed the torch at the nearest tree. See, you folks study environments, I modify them. The tree went up like a Roman candle, sending a wall of flame between the pack and the cubs. 3 razor claws shrieked and jumped back, their night vision temporarily ruined by the sudden flare of light. Commander Thane, Marcus continued conversationally, while using his multi-tool to quickly fashion caltrops from debris. Your people are crystalline, right? That means you can focus light. I need you to take my emergency beacon and turn it into a spotlight. Aim it at their eyes. But the manual says emergency beacons should only be used for... Thane's protest died as Marcus fixed him with a look that could have melted steel. Sparkles, I'm trying to keep us all from becoming alien chow. Work with me here. The beacon flared to life in Thane's crystalline hands, magnified into a beam that could probably be seen from orbit. Two more razor claws howled and stumbled backward, their sensitive eyes streaming. Now here's where it gets interesting, Marcus said, pulling out what looked like a standard atmospheric processor component. Pip, you're small and fast. I need you to get this to the other side of that rock formation. When I give the signal, activate it. What is it? Pip asked, his three eyes wide with a mixture of terror and fascination. Sonic disruptor, tuned to frequencies that should give our toothy friends here the mother of all headaches. Marcus ducked as a razor claw swiped at him, then jabbed it in the snout with a high-voltage power cell. Turns out those big ears aren't just for show. Dr. Velix was frantically taking notes on his scanner, his scientific mind apparently overriding his survival instincts. This is unprecedented. The tactical application of maintenance tools as weapons, the improvised environmental manipulation, the psychological warfare components. Marcus, this is revolutionary. Doc, less note-taken, more surviving, Marcus replied, using his belt to rig a tripwire that sent another razor claw sprawling. Although if we live through this, feel free to write a paper. I'd love to see the tenure committee's faces when you submit advanced combat applications of routine maintenance equipment. The pack was getting frustrated now. Half their number was injured, blind, or confused. The small pink creature that should have been easy prey was turning their own environment against them, using tools they didn't understand in ways that defied every hunting strategy they'd ever learned. You see, Marcus explained to the Alpha, while simultaneously rewiring his communicator into an improvised flashbang grenade. You made a fundamental error in your threat assessment. You looked at humans and saw soft, weak creatures without natural weapons. But you missed the important part. He threw the makeshift grenade into the center of the pack. The explosion of light and sound sent the remaining razor claws into complete chaos. We're tool users. Everything around us is a potential weapon. This forest, this equipment, even the laws of physics. We don't need claws because we have brains. We don't need fangs because we have ingenuity. And we don't need to be faster or stronger because we're too stubborn to know when we're beaten. Marcus pulled out his last ace in the hole, a standard emergency shelter generator. But instead of deploying it normally, he jury-rigged it to create an electromagnetic pulse. Pip, now would be good, he called. The sonic disruptor activated with a sound like the universe's largest dental drill. The remaining razor claws clutched their heads and howled, their sensitive hearing overwhelmed by frequencies that bypassed every natural defense they had. The thing is, Marcus continued, stepping toward the pack with the confidence of someone who had just turned certain death into a Tuesday afternoon inconvenience. You hunt prey, but we humans, we solve problems. And right now, you're my problem. The Alpha Razor Claw, blood streaming from its ears and unable to focus its eyes, looked at this small creature who had systematically dismantled an entire pack using nothing but maintenance tools and creative thinking. For the first time in its evolutionary history, it was looking at something that was definitively not prey. It was looking at a predator that didn't hunt for food or territory or dominance. It was looking at a predator that hunted for principle. Behind Marcus, the three cubs watched in awe as this strange, pink being, who had promised to protect them, proceeded to keep that promise in the most spectacular way possible. The Alpha Razor Claw was starting to realize it had made a tactical error of epic proportions. What should have been a simple feeding had turned into something that would probably require therapy, if Razor Claws had therapists, which they didn't, because apex predators weren't supposed to need emotional support after encountering maintenance engineers. You know what I love about pack hunters, Marcus said, pulling apart his atmospheric scanner and revealing what looked suspiciously like a compact explosive device. You're so focused on coordinated attacks that you forget about coordinated defense. He'd positioned himself on a small rise that gave him sight lines to the entire clearing, with the cubs safely behind him, and his alien teammates finally starting to understand that maybe, just maybe, they should help the crazy human instead of documenting his inevitable demise. The remaining Razor Claws were regrouping, but Marcus could see the uncertainty in their movements. Half their pack was down or incapacitated, their alpha was bleeding, and this ridiculous pink creature was still talking like he was conducting a particularly challenging equipment inspection. "Commander Thane," Marcus called, not taking his eyes off the circling predators. I need you to use that crystalline structure of yours to create a prism effect with my laser cutter. Can you do that? Theoretically, yes, but... Thane's transparent form was slowly gaining color again, apparently recovering from his earlier shock. Less theory, more laser light show, Sparkles. Thane focused the laser beam through his arm, splitting it into a rainbow of coherent light that painted the forest in deadly beauty. Marcus had calculated the angles perfectly. The scattered beams struck the Razor Claw's eyes from multiple directions simultaneously, completely overwhelming their visual processing. Beautiful work, Marcus said approvingly. Dr. Velox, remember those combustible tree resins you mentioned? I need you to identify which plants around here might have similar properties. Preferably something that produces a lot of smoke. Marcus, you're not seriously considering... Velox's skin was now a fascinating shade of purple-green that probably indicated scientific excitement mixed with existential terror. Doc, I'm considering everything. That's what we humans do. We don't just adapt to environments, we remake them to suit our needs. Marcus pulled out his emergency rations, broke them open, and began mixing the contents with soil and some kind of alien moss. The cubs watched in fascination as he created what looked like crude putty. See, you magnificent bastards made another mistake, he said to the Razor Claws, who were now approaching more cautiously, clearly uncertain about what new horror this small creature might unleash. You assumed that because we don't have natural weapons, we're helpless. But humans have been making things explode since we discovered fire. He shaped the putty around a power cell from his toolkit, creating an improvised grenade with a timer made from his chronometer's alarm function. Pip, I need you to do something that's going to sound completely insane, Marcus said, handing the device to the small alien. I need you to run straight at that group of 3 Razor Claws to your right. Don't worry, you won't get close enough for them to hurt you. Are you absolutely certain about this? Pip asked, clutching the device with all 3 hands. Kid, I've never been more certain of anything in my life. When you're about 20 meters away, drop this and hit the deck. Trust me. Pip took off running with the fearless enthusiasm of youth, while the 3 Razor Claws he was approaching prepared to pounce on what appeared to be a free snack. They never saw the explosion coming. The makeshift bomb detonated in a shower of dirt, alien moss, and emergency rations that created an instant smokescreen. But Marcus wasn't done. Velox, those plants I asked about? The silverleaf bushes, Velox called back, his scanner beeping frantically. They contain volatile oils that produce thick smoke when heated, but, Marcus, how did you know they were even here? Lucky guess, Marcus lied, having spotted them during his initial threat assessment. He'd been cataloging every potentially useful resource within a 50-meter radius since the moment they'd entered the clearing. Light 'em up. Dane's focused laser beam struck the silverleaf bushes, which promptly began producing enough smoke to choke a dragon. The remaining Razor Claws were now operating in near-zero visibility, their pack coordination completely destroyed. But Marcus was just getting started. He pulled out his multispectrum analyzer, normally used for identifying atmospheric compositions, and began recalibrating it. You know what Razor Claws really hate? He said conversationally. Ultrasonic frequencies. Plays havoc with their inner ear balance. The device began emitting a sound that was barely perceptible to human ears but clearly agonizing to the Razor Claws. They stumbled and shook their heads, completely disoriented. This is incredible, Dr. Velox whispered, his skin now cycling through colors that probably indicated scientific ecstasy. You're using their own enhanced senses against them. The superior hearing that makes them such effective hunters becomes a vulnerability when exposed to precisely calibrated sonic interference. Doc, you're starting to get it, Marcus grinned, pulling out his final surprise, a small gravity manipulator normally used for moving heavy equipment. But here's the thing about humans that your databases probably didn't mention. He activated the device, creating a localized gravity well that sent 2 more Razor Claws tumbling helplessly. We don't just problem solve, we over-engineer our solutions. The Alpha Razor Claw, still bleeding and now completely alone, looked around at what remained of its pack. Half were unconscious, the others were blind, deaf, or spinning helplessly in an artificial gravity field. The small clearing looked like a war zone, and at the center of it all stood one unremarkable human holding a toolkit and grinning like he'd just fixed a particularly stubborn life support system. You know what the really funny part is? Marcus said to the Alpha, while casually adjusting the gravity field to make the remaining Razor Claws even more nauseous. I'm not even a combat specialist. I fix air recyclers and food processors. Imagine what you'd be dealing with if you'd run into one of our actual soldiers. The Alpha Razor Claw's pupils dilated, It was beginning to understand that it hadn't just encountered a member of a prey species, it had encountered a member of a species that turned everything around them into weapons, including physics itself. Behind Marcus, Commander Thane was staring at the devastation with something approaching religious awe. "In all my military experience," he said quietly, "I have never witnessed such comprehensive tactical adaptation using improvised resources." "Stick around, Sparkles," Marcus replied, pulling out yet another tool from his seemingly bottomless kit. "I've got about 15 more gadgets in here, and I'm just starting to get creative." The cubs were now watching the proceedings with the fascination of children at a particularly spectacular fireworks display. The injured one had stopped whimpering and was actually taking notes on a small device, apparently deciding that if he was going to witness history being made, he might as well document it properly. The Alpha Razorclaw took one last look at the human who had single-handedly destroyed its pack using nothing but maintenance equipment and an attitude problem, then made the wisest decision of its predatory career. It ran. The forest fell silent except for the distant sound of razor claws crashing through underbrush in their desperate retreat. Marcus stood in the center of what looked like the aftermath of a small war, casually cleaning alien blood off his molecular cutter with a maintenance rag. "Well," he said, checking his chronometer, "that was invigorating. We've still got about 68 hours until pickup, so we should probably find somewhere to set up a proper camp." Behind him, his alien companions were experiencing what could only be described as a collective, existential crisis. Dr. Velik's skin had settled into a color that didn't exist in any known spectrum, possibly indicating emotions that his species had never needed to evolve. "Marcus," he said in a voice that cracked like a teenager asking someone to prom, "what exactly are you?" "Maintenance engineer, 3rd class," Marcus replied, packing his tools away with the same methodical precision he'd used to dismantle an apex predator pack. "Why?" Commander Thane's crystalline structure was resonating at a frequency that suggested his worldview was undergoing catastrophic structural failure. "In my 47 years of military service, across 17 different combat zones, I have never witnessed anything approaching what just occurred here." "Really?" Marcus looked genuinely surprised. "That was pretty basic problem solving. You identify the threat, assess available resources, and apply creative solutions until the problem goes away. I do the same thing when the life support systems start acting up." The 3 cubs had emerged from their hiding spot, and were now clustered around Marcus like he was some kind of mythical hero. The injured one, whose arm Marcus had splinted earlier, tugged at his pants leg. "Are all humans like you?" the cub asked in the universal child's language of wide-eyed wonder. Marcus knelt down to the cub's level, his expression softening. "Kid, I'm probably the least impressive human you'll ever meet. I fix air recyclers for a living. Back home, they'd probably assign someone like me to the janitorial department of the military." Pip, who had been unusually quiet since his explosive delivery mission, finally found his voice. "Marcus, according to my calculations, what you just accomplished should have been statistically impossible. The tactical advantages were entirely in favor of the Razorclaw pack." "Pip, buddy," Marcus said, ruffling the young alien's fuzzy head. "Statistics are just numbers people use when they don't want to think outside the box. The Razorclaws had natural advantages, sure, but they also had natural limitations. Big ears that make them vulnerable to sonic attacks, enhanced vision that can be overwhelmed by bright lights, pack mentality that falls apart when you disrupt their coordination." He stood up and started walking toward a defensible position near some rocky outcroppings. "The thing about humans is, we're not naturally built for any specific environment. We don't have the best hearing, or the best vision, or the fastest reflexes. What we do have is the ability to look at any situation and figure out how to make it work for us instead of against us." Dr. Velik was still frantically taking notes, his scanner practically smoking from overuse. "But the improvised weapons, the environmental manipulation, the psychological warfare tactics, how did you know any of that would work?" Marcus shrugged. "I didn't. That's why it's called improvisation. You try something, and if it doesn't work, you try something else. The key is to keep trying until something does work." As they walked, Commander Thane was composing what appeared to be an official report on his wrist communicator. "I am required to file a threat assessment update regarding human capabilities," he said slowly. "Previous classifications listed your species as harmless with minor industrial applications." "Yeah, that sounds about right," Marcus agreed. "We're great at fixing things." "I am changing that classification to approach with extreme caution, and preferably heavy artillery," Thane continued, "with a subcategory of do not threaten anything they consider under their protection, unless you enjoy being converted into component atoms by improvised weapons. Now that seems a bit extreme, Marcus protested. I just use some basic tools and common sense. The cubs had been listening to this exchange with growing excitement. The eldest one, a creature that looked like a cross between a teddy bear and a small dinosaur, was practically bouncing with enthusiasm. Will you tell us more stories about humans? The cub asked. Do you really have warriors who are even more dangerous than you? Marcus considered this seriously. Well, there was this one time my sister got into an argument with a parking enforcement officer. By the time she was done with him, he was apologizing to her car and offering to pay for premium wax service. The cubs looked at each other with expressions of pure awe. In their young minds, Marcus had just described someone who could defeat bureaucracy itself, which was clearly the most dangerous opponent in the known universe. Dr. Velox was now reviewing his recordings of the battle, his skin cycling through colors that indicated scientific revelation mixed with mild terror. The implications of this are staggering. If one human maintenance worker can neutralize a razor claw pack using improvised tactics, what would happen if humans ever decided to engage in organized warfare? Doc, Marcus said, setting up a small heating unit to make some coffee. Humans have been engaging in organized warfare for about as long as we've existed. The trick is that we mostly do it to each other. We're usually too busy arguing among ourselves to bother conquering other species. Vet, Commander Thane said with the tone of someone who had just glimpsed the true nature of the universe, is probably the only reason the rest of the galaxy still exists. As the sun set over Kepler 442b, the unlikely group settled in for the night. Marcus distributed emergency rations and checked everyone's injuries with the casual competence of someone who treated life-or-death situations as routine maintenance issues. The cubs curled up close to him, apparently having decided that the strange pink creature who had saved them was now their designated protector. Marcus didn't seem to mind, absently patting their heads while he reviewed his equipment manifest for tomorrow's challenges. Marcus, Dr. Velox said quietly, his skin now a peaceful blue-green that indicated contentment mixed with professional curiosity. When we return to civilization, there will be questions. Many questions. The galactic scientific community is going to want to study human combat capabilities. That's fine, Marcus replied, sipping his coffee and watching the alien stars. Just make sure they understand that what happened today wasn't combat. It was just customer service. Customer service? Pip asked. Sure. The cubs were in trouble, so I helped them out. The razor claws were making my job harder, so I convinced them to go away. Same principle as fixing a malfunctioning atmospheric processor, really. You identify the problem, gather your tools, and keep working until everything runs smoothly again. Commander Thane was still composing his report, muttering to himself in a language that sounded like wind chimes having an argument. Finally, he looked up. I am concluding my assessment with a recommendation that all future human encounters be classified as potential learning experiences rather than routine interactions, he announced, with a strong suggestion that anyone meeting a human should pay careful attention to their tool belt. Marcus chuckled and settled back against a comfortable rock, the three cubs using him as a pillow. You know what the funny thing is? Tomorrow, when our rescue ship arrives, I'll go back to fixing air recyclers and calibrating waste management systems. This will just be another day at the office. Another day at the office, Dr. Velox repeated slowly, as if trying to understand a completely alien concept. You consider this normal? Doc, normal is relative. Today we had predators and cubs, and some creative problem-solving. Yesterday I had to convince a temperamental fusion reactor to stop trying to achieve sentience. Honestly, the reactor was probably more dangerous. As the night deepened and his companions drifted off to sleep, Marcus Riley, maintenance engineer 3rd class, sat quietly under alien stars and wondered what new problems tomorrow would bring. He was looking forward to finding out.